Alright, what's going on, everybody? So I just got finished watching I'm Standing on a Million Lives, the anime adaptation of the manga series written by Naoki Yamakawa, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my first impressions of the first episode entitled Unqualified Heroes. And going into this series, I didn't know what to expect. It's an isekai fantasy anime, so it could just be another generic, run-of-the-mill isekai anime. And like I said, I didn't know what to expect, but, there were some good elements that I saw in this. There was a lot of good things, but then also there were some things that kind of stood out as just being very familiar elements. Cause I think if you've seen any isekai over the past few years, there's gonna be some things like just in this first episode alone that you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, this is basically that. Like what we've seen before. Like, for example, there were just like, in terms of this episode, there were a few things that stood out just immediately. The first thing that stands out to me are the character designs. I'll just say this in general, and it might get better. There might be better looking characters, better looking, more unique looking creatures, and all that stuff later down the line. So I'm not gonna completely, just say definitively that like every character design sucks or anything like that. I'm not gonna say that definitively, but I will say this: this show is yet another show that it's another show where the main character, where the main female and male character, they follow that same trend that I swear started with that same trend that started with Sword Art Online. The male character has black hair, the female has blonde hair. Can we ban this? Can they stop doing this? Can they really just come up with a different? All y'all had to do was just come up with any other character design, and I would have appreciated that, man. Can we stop doing this? It just seems lazy now at this point. And again, I want to be fair. I'm not trying to like bash it. I'm not trying to bash the characters just based on the character designs alone. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm just saying, y'all could have went with something a bit more original, a bit more unique. Having the blonde female and the black-haired main protagonist, like, we know what you're going for. You're going for that Sword Art Online crowd. You're going for the standard isekai fantasy watcher. And so, like, that was something that stood out to me immediately. And then also, just judging by the opening sequence, and this is another staple, this is another element that is very common among a lot of isekai anime. The MC, the main character, Yusuke, he is basically destined to have a harem. We already know this harem is coming. Another isekai anime with a harem. Right? And okay, so to be fair to this main character, because like I see what they're trying to do as far as like thematically and what character arc Yusuke might end up having, because we see in the first episode that basically he has no friends. The teacher even knows that he has no friends. And he hasn't even decided, what high school he's going to be going to. So he's pretty much, I don't want to say he's a loser, but he's a loner, right? And so I get where they're going. I get where they're going to go with this character, or at least I think I know where they're going to be going, because based on the world, because here's something I will give them credit for. I think what this episode did pretty well, I guess. I think what this episode did pretty well was set up this other world, the fantasy world, pretty well. And I'll also say that the fantasy world, while it is yet another one of these worlds that it's another one of these worlds that takes inspiration from video games, I like the way that it's done here. I like the fact that so it plays with a few things, because like we've seen other shows, like just for example, I already mentioned it anyway, Sword Art Online, and then even Dot Hack. Like we've seen other shows where like the whole premise is, oh, if you die in the game, you die in real life, that sort of thing. this kind of has a similar sort of premise, but it's done in a very interesting way. And with the rules of the game, I think that they're going to, I think that they're going to really use the rules of the game in a way to basically, at the end of the day, at the end of the series, I think Yusuke's whole arc and the lesson that he's going to learn is basically to rely on others, and he's gonna gain friends and stuff like that. And you'll see why I say that once I get into how the fantasy world works. But one thing that I do, another thing that I gotta give them praise for is the fact that the way that they set up him being transported into another world. Well, him and the other two characters introduced in this week's episode, Shindo and, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this name, Kusu. So those two characters, the two female characters, the way that they introduce, the way that they kind of bring these characters into this world is way better than, it's way better done than a lot of these shows. Like, I'm glad they didn't go with the whole main character gets hit by a truck or something. Like, that is the laziest thing that a lot of shows, that a lot of isekai series have done. And so I can give the author I can give him praise for that. I can give them points for that. Because the way that it works in this show, so like in the early part of the episode, the main character Yusuke, he's cleaning up the room, and then all of a sudden, he's cleaning the chalkboard, and then all of a sudden, the two girls that I mentioned before, they were in the room, but then they're gone. The teacher had left, and then all of a sudden, a net drops in the room. A child could be heard running in the hallway. All of a sudden, flowers start being drawn on the chalkboard just like magically, with like 3 stick figures drawn in the middle, and then he suddenly gets teleported. I like that. That was, at least y'all tried. At least y'all tried. But it was a cool way to get him in there. It was a better way to get him in there, other than, main protagonist gets hit by a truck. So that's good. There. Another unique element to this is the game master. And this is where I can, honestly, this might sound crazy, but like the game master in terms of his design, he's way more unique than the two other main characters that I mentioned earlier, Yusuke and Shindo. That character, the game master, is way more unique in terms of his character design. He's basically a blue man with like half a face that often doesn't finish his sentences, and I think that's a cool. The whole fact that he doesn't finish his sentences, I think that's a cool little touch there. So I'll give them points for that too. But something that I found very interesting about this world, because like I mentioned before, it's based on, it's loosely based on video games, right? And RPGs at that. And like the main character, Yusuke, he plays video games. We see in one scene where he's just playing the video game. He's alone in the dark and he's just playing the video game. And we see the way that he plays video games, because they even show at the end where like the way that he plays video games, like one of his characters could be down. He's not worrying about reviving that character. He's worrying about, look, I gotta beat this. I'll brute force it if I have to. And when we see that scene at the end, and I know, apologies, I'm kind of skipping around here, but when we see that scene at the end, that pretty much depicts kind of how he is as a sort of lone wolf type character, a character that, while I won't necessarily call him selfish yet, I think that that's kind of where they're kind of going with this character, where it's kind of like he's all about himself. And the thing with this world that makes it unique, because I mentioned Sora Online, I mentioned Dot Hack, and the whole you die in this world, you die in real life. They do that. They do have that element in the game. Well, not in the game. Well, in this fantasy world where like you can die, but you respawn after a few minutes. So I also thought that that was a pretty cool that was a pretty cool wrinkle in the mechanics of this world. So like you can revive, but if your whole party dies, that's it. You're all dead. So uh, in that little element of itself, I know what they're gonna do with this show. It's gonna be all about Yusuke basically having to rely on his allies. Now we see at the end of the episode, and I'm trying not to spoil too much, but we see by the end of the episode, he's like, "Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta do this on my own. I gotta train in order to defeat this creature," which I'm not gonna spoil, but you know they pretty much set up, and even at the beginning of the show, the way that the show opens, like this is going to be, in terms of this character, he's gonna be trying to lone wolf this thing. He's gonna be trying, because it really seems like he's really all about himself, all about his own survival, more than the survival of his allies. Now we don't get a lot of him being selfish or just all about himself in this episode, but we get like hints of that. Or at least that's what I think. I think we get hints of that, right? And like I said before, I think like the best part of this episode, and I think the the most interesting part of this of this anime is going to be the world itself. I think the characters right now, I guess they're fine, right? They're fine. They're not really doing anything too impressive in terms of just the our main cast so far. I mean, honestly, Yusuke, he doesn't have the most unique personalities. I mean, unique personality, and honestly, these personalities of these characters, there's not much to them yet. But again, they can just grow over time. They can develop. They can develop as characters, so that's fine. But I really don't think there's gonna be much to Yusuke. Now, what I'm hoping they'll do, I'm hoping this will be a ReZero situation. Whereas in ReZero, Subaru, that character, like the author was using that character to make a point, and I think that I'm hoping that they'll do that with Yusuke, and kind of really hone in on his issues in the real world. And then, like I said, I think the whole thing is gonna be him having to rely on others, him eventually gaining friends along the way, actually gaining real friends along the way. Because another thing that we get in this episode, in terms of the way the fantasy world works, so what the game master tells them is that, okay, y'all need to go ahead and finish these quests, or you're going to need to finish a quest. And what the game master tells Yusuke, and what he told Shindo and Kusu, what he told them is that, okay, you need to complete this quest, and then basically every time you complete a quest, you'll gain a new character. Well, not a new character, a new person is gonna join your party, your team, right? And then every time you beat a quest, you're going to basically every time they beat a quest, they're allowed to ask the game master a question. And I think that with the characters being able to ask him questions, I think that they're going to use that as a way of expanding the world and expanding the mystery behind this character, and the world, and stuff like that. Because even in this episode, Shindo says that she asked, okay, who brought me here, right? And he's like, somebody brought you here, or something like that. And then the other chick asked him, who are you, basically? And he's like, well, we're from the distant future. And so they basically kind of planted the seeds for this mystery in terms of who this character is, what is this world, why are they being brought to this world, stuff like that. So I thought that was a cool, interesting thing in the episode, and I thought that was well done in terms of just them setting up that mystery or set of mysteries. And another cool element before I go ahead and close this review out, another cool thing, another video game element that they brought into this world, this fantasy world, is that you can't use weapons outside of your occupation. Now, every character, every person in this party is going to have a role. They're gonna have a role similar to a regular RPG game. So Shindo is a wind wizard, and Kusu is a warrior. But they all suck. They're not good. They're at level 1. They struggle to defeat the goblins and stuff. So they're not very good. And Yusuke ends up getting an occupation, and I thought this was kind of a funny sort of thing where the game master basically spin the wheel. He spin the wheel in order to find out, what Yusuke's occupation is. It's basically random, and so Yusuke gets this occupation of farmer. He basically weak. He's basically weak, and that's another element. That's another thing that I like about this. Instead of making him, this OP main protagonist character that someone just best example, best comparison. I know I keep mentioning Sora Online, but best comparison, Kirito. Instead of making him like Kirito, you made him a farmer. You gave him the weakest of classes or occupations that you could probably give this character. And yes, and in terms of his weapons, all he has is a hoe and a scythe, a small little tiny scythe, right? So I like the fact that they made this guy weak, and the other two party members, and that's another cool thing about this, is that the other two party members, once they level up, I can imagine they'll learn better skills and get better and stuff. But he's always going to be a farmer, so his tools, what he can do is going to be very limited, I imagine. So it's like he's going to have to rely on these characters down the road. So whether he likes it or not, he's going to have to rely on those characters, I'm pretty sure. And so that's another part of it that makes me think that I'm right, that this whole thing is about him learning to rely on others, learning that he needs learning that he needs others to survive, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say about this episode without getting into too many spoilers. Hopefully I didn't spoil too much of the episode for y'all. And yeah, so far I thought the show, I thought it was pretty interesting. Like I said, there was a lot of generic elements to this, but I still think that it's worth a watch, I guess, or at least so far. We'll see how this goes. I think it's like a 13 episode series, so I might just continue watching this week by week. Let me know what you guys think about I'm Standing on a Million Lives. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. This has been Fear No Hate. I'm out of here. Peace.